ash rained down on the Kensington estate the night I escaped the royal massacre, harboring a secret capable of destroying the underworld. Auctioned for pennies as a ruined, scent-dead Omega, I stayed perfectly silent. Yet my ruthless Mafia purchaser had absolutely no clue he had just bought a royal time bomb. Cold iron bars pressed against my spine, sending a chill through my thin, ragged clothes. The underground auction house in the belly of New York was a sensory nightmare. Heavy cigar smoke, cheap cologne, and the aggressive, suffocating pheromones of desperate alphas choked the air. I sat in the darkest corner of my cage, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. You might have read the tabloids about the sudden, tragic collapse of the Kensington royal family. The official story claims a gas leak took out the entire royal lineage during a private retreat. That was a lie. It was a calculated slaughter. I know because I barely made it out of the estate alive, climbing through a shattered bathroom window, while the usurper's hitmen executed Arthur the Crown Alpha, and the only man I had ever loved. I survived, but not without a cost. To hide from the assassins, hunting down any loose ends, I had injected myself with military-grade scent blockers, essentially destroying my omega gland. My once sweet scent of wild honey and rain was gone, replaced by the sterile, bitter smell of ozone and burnt copper. To the world, I was no longer a fertile, desirable omega. I was a defect, a broken toy. That was exactly why I ended up in this squalid underground market. The slavers who found me wandering the streets didn't recognize Caspian, the secret lover of the Crown Alpha. They just saw a mute, shivering stray with a heavily scarred scent gland. They threw me into the bargain bin of the auction, expecting to sell me off for spare parts or manual labor. The auctioneer's gavel cracked like a gunshot, pulling me from my grim memories. Next up, lot 402, a defective Omega. Gland is shot, no pheromones, likely barren. Good for cleaning, cooking, or whatever else you don't mind a mute for. Opening bid is $500. A cruel wave of laughter rippled through the crowd of mobsters, thugs, and low-level criminals. Nobody wanted a broken Omega. An alpha's biology craves the scent and submission of a healthy mate. I was an insult to their instincts. I kept my head down, my hands instinctively resting over my slightly rounded, heavily bruised stomach. They thought I was barren. They were violently wrong. Deep inside me, protected by layers of trauma and chemical blockers, grew a royal alpha heir. Arthur's child. 500. A greasy man in the front row grunted, waving a placard. 500 going once. The auctioneer droned, clearly bored. The heavy mahogany doors at the back of the room suddenly slammed open. The laughter died instantly. The suffocating mix of cheap alpha scents in the room vanished, crushed under the overwhelming, terrifying presence of dark oak, expensive whiskey, and raw, unfiltered dominance. Adrian Cole had arrived. He walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for him like water. Adrian was the head of the Cole Syndicate, the most feared Mafia family on the East Coast. He was a towering, broad-shouldered alpha in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass, his dark eyes entirely devoid of warmth. Flanked by his heavily armed lieutenants, Luca and Matteo Adrian looked at the auction block with absolute disdain. $10,000! Adrian's voice was a low, gravelly rumble that sent a terrified shiver down the spine of every person in the room. The auctioneer fumbled his gavel, dropping it onto the podium. Mr. Cole, 10,000 for the defect. Adrian didn't raise his voice, but the sheer weight of his pheromones made the auctioneer drop to his knees. Did I stutter? Sold to Mr. Cole for 10,000. I was dragged out of the cage, my legs shaking so violently I could barely stand. One of Adrian's men, Luca, clamped a heavy hand on my shoulder and steered me toward the exit. I didn't dare look back. I didn't dare look up. I was terrified. Adrian Cole was known for his absolute cruelty. Why would a man who could have any pristine, high society Omega in the world pay a premium for a broken, scentless shell? The ride to the Cole estate was deafeningly silent. I sat in the back of the armored Maybach, pressing myself against the tinted window. Adrian sat opposite me, nursing a glass of bourbon, his piercing dark eyes scanning me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "You're shaking," he stated simply, taking a slow sip. I kept my mouth shut. I had decided weeks ago that playing mute was my best defense. "I bought you for a reason, little Omega," Adrian continued, leaning forward. "My family council is demanding I take a mate. They think an unbonded alpha is unstable. They want to arrange a marriage with a rival cartel's daughter. I have zero interest in dealing with a demanding, scent-heavy political spy in my bed." He reached out his leather-gloved hand gently, but firmly, tilting my chin up, so I was forced to meet his gaze. "You have no scent. You have no voice. You have no family to report back to. You will play the part of my docile rescued mate in public. In private, you will stay out of my way. You will have a warm bed, the best food, and absolute protection. Do we have an understanding?" I stared into his eyes. They were cold, pragmatic, and entirely devoid of the predatory lust I had seen in the other alphas. He just wanted a prop, a shield against his own family's politics. Slowly I gave a single shallow nod. Adrian let go of my chin and leaned back. "Good. Welcome to the Cole family." I turned back to the window, my hand resting invisibly over my stomach, under my oversized sweater. Adrian promised me absolute protection. If he ever found out that the child growing inside me was the sole surviving heir to the Kensington throne, the very royal family, the Mafia despised his protection, would turn into my execution. Life at the Cole estate was an exercise in luxurious isolation. The sprawling mansion was nestled in a dense private forest on the outskirts of the city, heavily guarded by armed men and surveillance cameras. True to his word, Adrian gave me my own wing of the house. My bedroom was massive, decorated in muted greys and soft blues, with a bed large enough for 3 people. For the first few weeks, our arrangement worked flawlessly. I played my part. When Adrian hosted dinners with rival bosses or his own captains, I sat quietly by his side, wearing expensive silk suits tailored to hide my changing body. I poured wine, smiled faintly, and offered no pheromones for the other alphas to challenge. Adrian seemed pleased. He treated me with a distant, almost business-like respect. But behind the closed doors of my private wing, a terrifying crisis was unfolding. The military-grade blockers I had used to destroy my scent and hide my true nature were beginning to fail. They were not designed to suppress the biology of a pregnant Omega, especially not one carrying a royal alpha bloodline. The child inside me was growing rapidly, drawing on my life force and fiercely fighting against the chemical restraints in my blood. Royal alphas are a genetic anomaly. They are stronger, faster, and possess a pheromone profile that can bend ordinary alphas to their will. Even in the womb, the baby was unimaginably strong. It started with the fevers. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my sheets soaked in sweat, my body trembling violently as my internal temperature skyrocketed. Then came the pain. Sharp, agonizing cramps tore through my abdomen as the baby demanded nutrients I couldn't provide. But the most dangerous symptom was the scent. My destroyed gland was trying to heal itself. Late at night, the bitter smell of ozone would crack, and the faintest wisp of crushed mint, thunderstorm, and wild honey, the undeniable, intoxicating scent of a royal bloodline, would leak into the air. I had to scrub my skin with harsh, unscented chemical soaps every morning, just to wash it away before anyone noticed. My secret came dangerously close to being exposed during a high-stakes poker night Adrian hosted for his top lieutenants. I was standing by the mahogany wet bar, pouring a glass of scotch for Luca Adrian's second-in-command. Luca was a perceptive alpha, always watching me with a mix of suspicion and pity. As I handed him the crystal tumbler, a sudden, blinding spike of pain ripped through my stomach. It was like a knife twisting into my organs. I gasped a sharp, audible sound that betrayed my mute persona, and doubled over the heavy bottle of scotch slipping from my fingers. It shattered on the hardwood floor, echoing like a bomb in the quiet room. The poker table fell silent. Adrian was out of his chair in a millisecond, crossing the room before I could even hit the floor. He caught me by the waist, his strong arms preventing me from collapsing into the broken glass. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Adrian's voice was tight, a rare crack in his iron composure. I'm fine." I croaked my voice, rough and unused from weeks of silence. The men in the room stared in shock, realizing I wasn't actually mute. Before Adrian could ask another question, the baby kicked. It wasn't a gentle flutter. It was a violent, territorial thrash. And with that movement, my scent blockers completely failed for a fraction of a second. A wave of pheromones exploded from me. But it wasn't the sweet, submissive scent of a distressed Omega. It was heavy dominant and laced with the aggressive, regal scent of an enraged alpha. Luca took a step back, dropping his glass. Matteo gripped the edge of the poker table, his eyes wide. Even Adrian froze, his pupils blowing wide, as his alpha instincts violently clashed with the scent hitting his nose. "What the hell is that?" Luca growled instinctively, baring his throat in a sign of submission to a superior alpha, looking around the room for an intruder. "Who is here? Clear the room!" Adrian roared, scooping me up into his arms effortlessly. "Get Dr. Hayes now." The journey to the underground medbay was a blur of agonizing pain and suffocating heat. Adrian laid me down on the sterile examination table, his hands lingering on my waist a second longer than necessary. His dark eyes were frantic, searching my pale, sweating face. Dr. Hayes, a stoic beta who had served the Cole family for decades, rushed into the room carrying a medical bag. "Get out, Adrian," Hayes ordered, already pulling on latex gloves. "His body temperature is off the charts. I need to run scans." "I'm not leaving him," Adrian growled, an unexpected possessiveness bleeding into his tone. "If you want him to live, you will step outside," Hayes snapped back. Adrian's jaw clenched, but he finally turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the heavy steel door behind him. Once we were alone, I grabbed Dr. Hayes by his white coat, pulling him close with whatever strength I had left. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Please don't tell him." "You can't tell him?" Dr. Hayes frowned gently, prying my fingers off his coat. "Calm down, son. Let me just take a look." He pulled up my sweater, his eyes widening as he saw the distinct, firm swell of my 5-month pregnancy that I had been hiding under baggy clothes and corsets. He quickly wheeled over an ultrasound machine, squirting cold gel onto my stomach. I watched his face as he stared at the monitor. I saw the exact moment the beta doctor realized what he was looking at. The color drained entirely from Hayes's face. His hands began to shake. This is impossible," Hayes whispered, his voice trembling. He looked from the monitor to me, absolute terror in his eyes. The bone density, the accelerated heart rate, the pheromone production in utero. He backed away from the table, knocking over a tray of surgical instruments. "You're not just pregnant," Hayes said, his breath hitching. "That is a royal alpha. The Kensington bloodline is supposed to be dead." "Who are you?" Before I could answer, the heavy steel door of the med bay groaned open. Adrian stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his dark eyes locked on the ultrasound monitor, and then on my exposed, pregnant stomach. "A royal," Adrian whispered, the realization crashing down on him. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees as Adrian stepped fully into the light, drawing his silver-plated handgun from his shoulder holster. "You brought a Kensington into my house." Fear, cold and absolute, paralyzed my chest as the barrel of Adrian's gun reflected the harsh fluorescent lights of the medical bay. Dr. Hayes froze his hands, raised in a universal gesture of surrender. The ultrasound monitor clicked rhythmically in the background, a steady, mocking reminder of the life pulsing inside me. "Explain." Adrian growled, his voice dropping to a frequency that made the glass vials on the counter vibrate. "Before I paint this wall with whatever lies you're about to tell me." I swallowed hard, my throat raw. The mute act was completely shattered. There was no point in hiding behind silence anymore. I sat up slowly on the examination table, pulling my shirt down to cover my stomach, though the truth was already bare before him. "His name was Arthur," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "He was the crown alpha of the Kensington lineage. I was his hidden mate. When Alastair Montgomery orchestrated the massacre at the estate, he thought he wiped out everyone. He didn't know I existed. He didn't know I escaped." Adrian's eyes narrowed, the gun remaining perfectly level. The Kensingtons were the governing royal authority. Their elimination threw every syndicate on the East Coast into a brutal territory war. Montgomery claimed a rival faction from the West Coast, did it? Montgomery lied, I said, bitterly, tears stinging my eyes. He wanted the crown for himself. He killed Arthur in cold blood. I took military-grade blockers to burn out my own scent gland so his hunters wouldn't find me. If they smelled wild honey and rain, they would know I was Arthur's Omega. I let myself be captured and sold into the underground market because a broken, scentless slave is invisible. I just needed to survive long enough to give birth. Adrian didn't lower the weapon. His mind was clearly racing, calculating the geopolitical chessboard of the underworld. A surviving Kensington heir changed everything. If the other syndicates found out, it would trigger an apocalyptic war. If Montgomery found out, he would raze New York to the ground to eliminate the child. "You brought a royal war to my doorstep," Adrian whispered, his jaw clenching. "You lied to me. You used my estate as a sanctuary for a dead king's bastard." "He is not a bastard," I snapped, a sudden burst of protective maternal instinct flaring within me. My inner Omega roared, defying the terrifying Mafia boss. "He is the rightful heir, and he is a child, Adrian, just a child." For a long, agonizing minute, the only sound was the hum of the ultrasound machine. Adrian stared at me, his dark eyes scanning my defensive posture, my hand firmly planted over my womb. The cold, calculating Mafia leader was warring with his primal alpha instincts. An alpha's biology is hardwired to protect pregnant Omegas, even if the child isn't theirs. But Adrian was a man who survived by killing his threats, not harboring them. Slowly, incredibly, Adrian lowered the gun and clicked the safety back on. He holstered the weapon and ran a hand through his dark hair, letting out a sharp, ragged breath. "Hayes," Adrian commanded, without looking at the doctor. "What's his physical condition?" Dr. Hayes cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "The blockers he took have severely compromised his immune system and damaged his natural biology. The fetus is incredibly strong, typical of a royal alpha bloodline, and it's feeding off his remaining energy. If he keeps taking those blockers, or if he doesn't get specialized medical care, the baby's sheer power will kill him before he even reaches full term. Adrian stepped closer to the table, towering over me. The terrifying aura of dark oak and heavy whiskey washed over me, but this time it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a shield. "Here is what is going to happen," Adrian said, his voice dropping into an intense, authoritative cadence. He laid out his terms with absolute clarity. "The identity, you are no longer Caspian the royal fugitive. You are my mate, officially, publicly, and privately. The medical regime, you stop taking those poison blockers immediately. Doctor, Hayes will formulate a synthetic stabilizer to keep your scent manageable, but you will stay confined to the residential wing. The child. When that child is born, the world will know him as a Cole. He will bear my name, he will inherit my protection, and he will be raised as my heir." I stared at him in utter disbelief. Why would you shield the child of your former ruler? What do you gain from this? Adrian leaned down, his face inches from mine, his dark eyes burning with a fierce, dangerous intensity. "Because Alistair Montgomery killed my older brother 10 years ago and made it look like an accident. I've been waiting for the perfect weapon to destroy his empire from the inside out. Your child isn't just a royal heir, Caspian. He is my ultimate vengeance." 3 months passed, and the fragile peace we had built inside the Cole estate began to fracture. True to his word, Adrian protected me. The blockers were completely out of my system, and my true Omega scent, crushed mint thunderstorm, and wild honey had returned with a vengeance. To prevent the scent from leaking outside the house, Adrian had the entire residential wing sealed with specialized air filtration systems. But our dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Adrian was no longer the distant, pragmatic businessman who bought a prop at an auction. The returning Omega pheromones combined with my vulnerable state were doing something catastrophic to his alpha biology. He spent more and more time in my quarters. He brought me my meals personally. He would sit by my bedside late into the night, reading through cartel ledgers while I slept, his powerful presence a comforting weight that kept my pregnancy nightmares at bay. One evening, as a violent thunderstorm rumbled outside, the baby began to thrash violently. I gasped, gripping the edge of the mattress, as a wave of intense heat washed over me. Adrian was by my side instantly, his large, warm hand pressing gently against the heavy swell of my abdomen. As soon as his palm touched my skin, the baby calmed down, completely settling against Adrian's warmth. It was a bizarre, instinctive reaction. The royal child inside me was recognizing Adrian not as an enemy, but as his protector, his father. "He likes you," I whispered, looking up at Adrian through my eyelashes. Adrian didn't speak. He just stared at his hand on my stomach, a look of profound, raw vulnerability crossing his face. For a man who had lived his entire life surrounded by blood and betrayal, this quiet domestic moment was entirely foreign. He looked up, his dark eyes locking onto mine, and for the first time I didn't see the Mafia boss. I saw a man who was deeply, completely falling for a broken Omega he was supposed to just use as a weapon. "Caspian," Adrian murmured, his thumb brushing against my cheek, wiping away a stray tear. "I won't let them hurt you. Either of you." Before I could answer, the lights in the mansion flickered and died. The hum of the air filtration system cut out, leaving the room in pitch darkness. The heavy metallic tang of ozone and fear instantly filled the air. Adrian was on his feet in a heartbeat, pulling his handgun from his holster. The mansion's backup generators should have kicked in within 3 seconds. They didn't. Thud, thud, thud. The distant muffled sounds of suppressed gunfire echoed from the lower levels of the house. "We've been compromised," Adrian growled, his voice tight. He grabbed a heavy tactical vest from the closet and threw it over my head, fastening the straps with practiced speed. "The security grid was shut down from the inside. We have a traitor." The heavy mahogany doors of my bedroom burst open. Luca Adrian's second-in-command stepped into the room, a smoking assault rifle in his hands. But he wasn't pointing it at the hallway. He was pointing it directly at Adrian. "I'm sorry, boss," Luca said, his face expressionless, "but Montgomery is offering $50 million for the head of the Kensington whore and the bastard he's carrying. The coal syndicate can't survive a war with Montgomery's coalition. I'm saving the family." "You miserable parasite," Adrian hissed, stepping directly in front of me, shielding my body with his own. "I brought you up from the gutters." "And I'm putting myself in a penthouse," Luca countered, raising his weapon. "Drop the gun, Adrian. There are 30 mercenaries downstairs. You're outnumbered." What Luca didn't calculate was the volatile nature of a pregnant Royal Omega under attack. The sheer terror of losing Adrian, combined with the imminent threat to my baby, triggered something primal, deep within my biology. The dormant royal genes in my blood, supercharged by the baby's developing power, exploded outward. A massive, suffocating wave of royal command pheromones blasted from my body. It wasn't the sweet, submissive scent of a normal Omega. It was the terrifying, crushing weight of a monarch. The air became thick, smelling of a violent, destructive thunderstorm. Luca gasped, his knees buckling instantly under the sheer psychological weight of the royal aura. His hands shook the assault rifle, slipping from his fingers, as his alpha biology forced him to drop to his knees, vomiting from the sheer intensity of the submission command. Even Adrian stiffened, his jaw clenching, as he fought against the overwhelming biological urge to bow. "Adrian now." I screamed the effort, draining every ounce of my remaining strength. Adrian broke through the paralysis first. With a feral roar, he lunged forward, firing 2 rounds directly into Luca's chest. The traitor collapsed to the floor, dead, before he hit the ground. Adrian didn't waste a second. He scooped me up into his arms, running down the dark hallway, as the sounds of mercenaries clearing the lower floors grew louder. He navigated the mansion's secret passageways, descending into the underground tunnels built beneath the estate for emergencies. We burst out into a hidden garage a quarter-mile away from the main house, where an unassuming armored SUV was waiting. Adrian threw me into the passenger seat, jumping into the driver's side and slamming the gas pedal down just as headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Bullets peppering the reinforced rear glass echoed like firecrackers as we tore away into the stormy night, leaving the burning coal estate behind us. An hour later, we pulled into a secluded safe house, hidden deep within the coastal cliffs of Long Island. Adrian killed the engine and immediately turned to me, his hands shaking as he checked me for injuries. "Are you hit?" "Is the baby okay?" he asked frantically. "We're fine." I breathed, exhausted, but alive, holding his face in my hands. "We're safe." Adrian let out a ragged sob, pulling me into his chest, burying his face into the crook of my neck, inhaling the deep, rich scent of wild honey and rain. The contract was dead. The fake marriage was over. As we sat in the quiet safe house, watching the dawn break over the Atlantic Ocean, I knew the truth. Adrian Cole wasn't using me for vengeance anymore. He loved us. And together with the blood of a Mafia king and a royal lineage running through our veins, we were going to take back everything they stole from us. What an absolute whirlwind of betrayal, hidden power, and royal bloodlines. Caspian and Adrian are now officially on the run, but with a royal alpha heir on the way, the underworld isn't ready for the storm that's brewing. If you want to see Part 5 and find out how they take down Alistair Montgomery, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow storytelling lovers, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.